Isn't a star card like having somebody come along and stamp 666 on your forehead? 840, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Folks, it hasn't gotten much warmer. It was 43 when we started the show, and we just dropped to 41. I'm afraid it's not going to be a lot warmer today, and we may not see any serious clearing with the rain showers until sometime overnight. Trust me, though, the rest of the week looks at least sunny. Not going to be terribly warm, but it at least looks sunny. I came across something over the weekend. Now, I don't know about you, but if you have women in your family, I know there are some guys who probably like this too, but for the most part, it's a women's driven thing. The Hallmark Channel and all of the Christmas movies that are out this time of year. I have a column about this tomorrow in the Times News where I describe how these Hallmark movies are all a simple formula. A couple of really good-looking people, and they're attracted to each other, although they may not know they're attracted to each other, or they're in denial about being attracted to each other. Then there's some major crisis that breaks them apart. And then at the very end of the film is when it's just about getting ready to get on an airplane, leave, and never come back. They're reunited, and they go off and live happily ever after. So it's like a modern series of fairy tales, but it doesn't. I don't think it takes the people who. There was a story that I happened to see that said that there's going to be like 36 new Hallmark Christmas movies this year. Now that's a lot of movies, but when you just basically change the names and the scenery, it's the same movie over and over again. There's a story at Christian Science Monitor, and it's about how people are watching this network because it appeals to a little bit more warmth in your life than all of the gloom and doom that we're often dealing with. I had an old girlfriend, and November 1st, when the local radio station would start playing Christmas music, that's all she'd listen to in her car. That's all she'd listen to when she was working in her kitchen. And she would sit there and watch Hallmark movies every night after she got home from work, over and over and over again. Now, if you want a happy relationship, you guys out there realize you're supposed to sit there and nod your head and smile while that movie's on. And if you say, this is just like last night's movie, but there's a different cast, then you get a dirty look. And somebody may not cook dinner for you the next time you come and visit. A writer by the name of Hannah Schloman at Christian Science Monitor, she features a fellow by the name of Darren Triplow. He flies helicopters in Rwanda, that's in Africa for you liberals listening, to help conservationists watch for poachers illegally hunting black rhinos. To unwind when he's at home in Washington, D.C., he'll sometimes settle in front of the television, but it's not the weekend game that he turns on, it's the Hallmark Channel. In 2016, this I thought was an amazing figure. In 2016, Hallmark saw a 10% increase in total viewership and a 26% increase among viewers 18 to 49. Now, I believe there's 3 Hallmark networks now. You've got one that is completely devoted to these Christmas movies, and it ranked number 4 among primetime cable networks last year, even ranking above MSDNC. Yeah, probably no surprise there. The one thing that I've noticed, though, when I watch these movies, and as I say, they crank them out just like somebody's got a cookie cutter and just stamping them out as they go down an assembly line. Even though it's always about Christmas, but it's always about a lot of tinsel and a lot of trees. And sometimes they go down to the church, and the church is always pretty much, it looks like it comes right out of a Curry and Ives painting. But I don't think I've ever seen one of these Hallmark movies actually reference Jesus. I mean, it's Christmas, right? But his name is never mentioned because I guess Hallmark is worried somehow they're going to offend somebody, because apparently Christmas is just about lots of gift giving and tinsel and falling in love. Maybe not knowing that you're falling in love, but still falling in love, according to these movies. The other thing about this time of year, now that we've cleared the Thanksgiving holiday, I decided to ask. I did a simple survey the other day on Facebook, and I was asking friends if they had put up a tree yet. And number 2, do they use a real tree or do they use one of these manufactured trees? That is something that isn't, well, we call them artificial. Now, when I was a kid growing up, my first few Christmases, I remember these great, big, enormous Christmas trees that we would have that my dad would cut and bring home. But my sister was severely asthmatic, so we eventually had to sideline the real trees, and so my family was one of the first in the neighborhood to get one of these artificial trees, which have been around a long time, though. I think you can go back to the 1930s, and they were marketing the first artificial trees. They just got to look better and better and better. I have one that I've had now for 20 years. In fact, I think this is my 21st year with that tree. And it has started to lose a lot of the needles. It's almost like a real tree in that sense. You cannot put it up. You open the box, and there's the little green plastic needles all over the bottom. But I used to use that tree. I bought it because my sister would come visit at Christmas, and I didn't want her, I wanted her to be able to breathe while she was at my house. And asthmatics, they have some difficulty. And for some reason, pine, conifers just set her off. Coming up on 847, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I also believe that if you're using a real tree, it's likely better for the environment than using an artificial. Even though I've used an artificial tree for 20 years, disposal is not easy when you're disposing of an artificial tree, manufacture of it. But, the people who actually who grow real trees, they plant new trees as well, and that's supposedly good for the environment. Several people told me that they already had chopped down trees down in the South Hills. And I thought it was a little early, but I heard a comment this morning on Fox and Friends on television. Janice Dean, the weatherwoman, was talking about that. She said, won't they dry out? And somebody said, no, you keep watering them, but then you can't really keep them up after Christmas Day if you get them up early. And then there are the people who like to put up multiple trees. Usually they're the people who are doing the artificial. A friend who works for my hometown newspaper, she commented and said what she does at the end of the year, she has a great big bag. She pulls down over the tree with all the decorations and lights still on it, and then they slide it off into a closet. And then the following year comes around, the weekend after Thanksgiving, they slide it out of the closet, they pull the bag off of it and plug it in, and it's ready to go. She said it saves a lot of time. We have a caller with us, and caller, it's coming up on 848. You're up next. You're on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning. I hope you had a good weekend there.
Sure did.
And I just want to say I miss the Christmas tree we had in probably the late 60s. There was aluminum and had spinning, rotating colors that went on it. Do you recall these trees?
I do. I saw a few of those.
I kind of miss that for some reason. We had that for a year or two, and they don't make them anymore for some reason.
Did you remember in a Charlie Brown Christmas 2 where they wrapped their knuckles against an aluminum tree and get the metal sound?
No, I didn't see that part. I'll tell you.
Well, I thank you much for the call. I remember seeing those, and you can go and you can still buy an artificial tree that is pink or white. I tried to, when my daughter was little, I tried to convince her we should buy one that was white. I got a look from her because, white trees. Well, you're supposed to look like it's covered in snow. That's why you would buy the white tree. But I have seen them in other colors. I will say one thing, that over the years, the quality has gotten much better. So you can go by and, you can walk down and one will be a Fraser fir, another will be a Douglas fir, and they break them down and they do look like that. I had an uncle who used to buy this massive thing. It must have been 12 feet high. And my uncle and aunt in that particular family didn't have a pot to pee in, but by gosh, they would go buy the most elaborate, gaudy Christmas tree, but it was an artificial tree, and it must have taken up half of their living room. At least it had that appearance. But it looked beautiful. They must have spent, and this was 30 years ago, they must have spent hundreds of dollars on that artificial tree. Then again, you would keep that artificial tree year after year after year, and the $57 that I invested 20-some years ago, Christmas season of 1997, the $57 that I invested in that tree at a Walmart store, I've likely done okay. But I still long for the smell of that pine in the house. The thing is, if you've got cats, you have to realize your Christmas tree is often just one big toy for them. And they don't understand that. And they'll be knocking things down and playing soccer with all of the different bulbs and ornaments on the floor. And unfortunately, if you walk in the room and they've managed to break one, or you step on it and break it yourself and you're not wearing shoes, it could be a little dangerous. But I was asking people questions about this, and the responses were interesting too about when people actually put up a tree. because we talked last week about how Thanksgiving in many people's eyes is now overlooked because of the commercialization of Christmas. And look, that's not new. I remember when I was a kid that the commercials for toys were on in September or October so that you could go badger your parents. Can I, 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 until your parents would finally say, all right, and, let it go at that point. But I've been asking people questions about this when they put the tree up. Now, there are a handful of people out there who I think still do it later in the season. Technically, the Advent calendar begins this weekend, so some people may do it then. And technically, from a church standpoint, the Christmas season is actually from Christmas Day onward, and not beforehand. That's the commercial season. Everything beforehand is the commercial season. And look, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. We play music here starting, I think, November 15th. And there's a huge audience for that out there. People would like to hear it. And I had this conversation with a couple of other friends as well. When do you start playing that music? And one of them says it depends on the music. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, my daughter liked to sing that when she was a little girl in July. And, but he said if you're doing some traditional carols that are related to your faith, one friend said Christmas Eve is really the time to start those. But if you've got a Sirius XM radio, you can hear those already. 8:52, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com, 208-736-0300. Caller, you're up next.
Yeah, you mentioned that you like the smell of pine, but you don't get that with an artificial tree. You can buy a diffuser and get pine oil, put it in that diffuser, and it'll give you the smell of pine while you're using an artificial tree.
And I remember this probably 30, 40 years ago. Somebody was marketing an aerosol spray, and you would spray it on the tree, and for a while it would give it that pine smell. Probably destroyed the ozone layer, too. Liberals wouldn't appreciate that. We have another caller joining us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on Top Story. Go ahead.
Yes, you're talking about the Christmas and how early you celebrate it, et cetera, et cetera. And I had the opportunity in 1972, 73 to celebrate Christmas in, I'm going to say, Kodiak, Alaska. And you say, okay, well, it's in the United States, but it's in a different part of the country. It's totally.
Sure is.
And we celebrated Halloween. We celebrated Thanksgiving. We celebrated Christmas. We celebrated Russian Orthodox Christmas. We celebrated Easter. We celebrated Russian Orthodox Easter. Every holiday was celebrated as itself because there was nothing else to do. In the middle of the night on Kodiak, Alaska, when it was dark at 3 o'clock, every holiday was celebrated to its fullest extent, and then we went to the next one. We didn't rush through Thanksgiving to go to Christmas. We didn't rush through Halloween to go to Thanksgiving or to go to Christmas. Every holiday was celebrated to its fullest extent, and it was rather enjoyable. It was an eye-opening experience for an Idaho Farm Kid that had never been out of Idaho until then, and I kind of missed that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the call. 2006, I had an opportunity to go to work at a radio station in Kodiak. And remember they told me, they said, but you have to pay your own way. And they said, and remember to get everything here, all of your furnishings and the like will probably run you $10,000. I said, that sounds nice. And then I saw a picture of a street in Kodiak. There's a big McDonald's restaurant, and there's a big Grizz walking down the street by it. And I thought, okay, $10,000 to go out there and get eaten by a Kodiak bear? No, thank you. A couple of minutes before the break, and caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Speaking of Christmas trees.
Did I lose you?
Oh, speaking of Christmas trees, I remember 40 years ago, my father, for some reason, whatever crossed his mind, took us out to cut our own tree. And it was in Colorado. He climbed his butt up some 30-foot pine tree and cut off the top, which I know is wrong and illegal, But I just have that memory of him climbing up into the sky, cutting off the top of this damn tree, watching it fall down, and we were just so proud of this tree killing event.
Well, and I'll tell you, thank you for the call. My wife insisted one time we buy a tree, and I said it's not going to fit. No, 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 it'll be fine. I said no, it'll be too tall. And of course, when we got home, I was right. But I'm the one who had to go off on the porch and saw some of the lower branches, and it didn't look very good afterward. But I wasn't going to win that argument. I remember another story too, as well. Don't forget the season. We had a couple of guys who lived in the neighborhood named the Hoffman Brothers. They were nice guys, but to call them dingbats was probably an insult to dingbats. One night, there was a beautiful home up the street on the top of the hill where this fellow had all of these pines growing out in his. They weren't big. It was not a Christmas tree farm. He just had planted a number of pines probably 15, 20 years before, and he kept them so well manicured and the like. And one night, somebody saw the Hoffman brothers walking down the street dragging a Christmas tree. And somebody said, "Where'd you get that tree, Bob?" Bob was the older brother. No, Bill was the older brother. Bill said, "Oh, we just cut it up there over at the neighbor's house." And somebody said, "Well, did you ask them if you could cut the tree?" "Oh, heck no. It's free this way." They took their tree home and the family put it up. And I don't know that the fellow who owned the little plot where all the trees were growing, that he noticed until maybe spring that he had a tree missing. And again, it sort of defeats the whole meaning of Christmas, doesn't it? To go steal a tree from somebody's backyard. Coming up on 9 o'clock, we have one more hour of the program ahead. Bill Colley with you today on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. A lot to talk about coming up. There's a wealthy fellow, he's a Democrat, who says he's a billionaire, limousine liberal. He may be running for president in 2020. When he was asked about the fact that he has been spending a lot of money, lavishly on various political campaigns, while he claims he opposes big money in politics, he justifies it by saying because it's for all the right reasons, at least from his viewpoint. Might get to that in hour number 2 of the show on News Radio 1310 KLIX. It is Top Story.